Welcome to Unsilent with your hosts Dave and Brian. This is not another current events podcast. We're digging deeper, diagnosing, and discussing what's really going on today, how we got here, and providing observations for future generations.
Welcome to Unsilent. We're Brian and Dave. We'd love to hear back from you. Where did we get it right? Where did we get it wrong? Where are we completely crazy? You can do that by visiting unsilentpodcast.com. You can visit us on Rumble or Facebook or the variety of different places folks get together in the digital public square. So it's day after Election Day, Brian. Another fun time for Americans to celebrate our great American pastime of yelling at each other about things we completely can't agree on. What's your
another whirlwind of political tsunami, I guess you could say. Land ashore yesterday. So
there you go.
We got to talk about Mamdani winning the New York City mayoral race, but before we do that, I'm gonna share a clip. It's like a 40-second or something like that clip. That's not directly related to the election, but it does inform much of my opinion about how I think about the kind of movement that guy represents. So this is just kind of a funny little clip here. It's asking people what they think about socialism versus capitalism, and then it asks a follow-up question.
Okay.
I mean, which would you rather have in America, socialism or capitalism?
I would say socialism. I favor that over capitalism. I also think I favor that.
Like, I have family in Europe. They go to college for free. Their healthcare is paid for. They don't have to worry about it at all.
So on campus, if there's a GPA disparity where there's people at the bottom with a poor GPA, would you support a policy where people at the top spread the wealth and give that GPA to people at the bottom?
I've lost a lot of sleep, so I don't know if I will be fair.
But it's about being fair, right? We got to help people at the bottom.
I'm all for helping. I wouldn't give let me just give you some of my points.
That's completely different.
How's it different?
Because I'm studying all day for my grade.
I would want to say no, straight up. Well, I mean, then there would be no point to having a GPA, because then if everyone has the same, then there's no metric, right?
But it's all about fairness, right?
I mean, I sacrifice a lot to get my GPA, so no, I wouldn't sacrifice my own things.
I guess it would be kind of hypocritical for me to say no.
So...
You think?
This is kind of how I look at all these. Oops! Oh, sorry. Hold on. I gotta go back and turn it off again. Sorry about that. All right. So this is kind of how I think of all these socialistic things, and I think the translation into real life is not that far fetched. Meaning. Let's forget for this conversation. Let's forget the billionaires who have inherited the Heinz fortune and the Ford family. Okay, let's put those people.
Sure,
you're gonna have that no matter what. That's an occurrence no matter what kind of society. You're gonna have the ultra wealthy.
You have oligarchs. Yeah,
you're always gonna have that. Okay, so let's put those people aside. You and I have both built businesses that require a tremendous amount of time, effort, and sacrifice.
Oh yeah.
Right? The people who build the kinds of businesses that we all know, like the people who own, home service, like HVAC companies and accounting firms and whatever, to build those things to be any meaningful size at all takes a tremendous amount of sacrifice.
It does.
But all that sacrifice is discounted because people don't see it, and it's not their own sacrifice.
Right.
So it's it doesn't exist when somebody else puts in all that work, and it's just only fair that we all share in the proceeds.
Yeah.
But when it's me and what I've done, even if it's something like studying hard for my GPA, well, now it's different. It's different when I've put in a lot of work. That putting in a lot of work is discounted, not only just human nature when somebody else does it, because we don't feel the pain and the sacrifice. So we discount that automatically, but people aren't even aware that that's how businesses are built. I think by and large, and so I think it's just so fascinating to watch. When you're talking about me, and the same thing goes where I've seen videos where they'll knock on a door. Like last year during the election, they would knock on a door of a house that had a Harris sign out front. And they would say, "Hey, well, do you support illegal immigrants being here?" And they would say, "Yeah, of course I do." And they say, "Great, I got 3 of these guys right here from Guatemala. They're looking for a place." They'd be like, "Whoa, no." it's always the same. Like if it's my sacrifice, it shouldn't be a thing. But if it's our or your sacrifice, well, of course we should do the same.
Yeah.
And I think that it's going to be no different in New York City. It's going to be the exact same thing. And the final thing I would say that to set up my perspective on this is I've been saying for a long time in this podcast, which is none of this stuff is going to go away until people experience the pain personally. Like the crime in California will not go away until it infiltrates Beverly Hills and whatever other deep blue areas. When the crime infiltrates there, all of a sudden crime will be something we need to take on.
Right. And, this whole, I see people reacting to this or reacting to, socialism is taking over the Democratic Party. And yeah, it probably is. I mean, to a great extent. But I see people reacting to that and they're like, oh, there's this great philosophical change. There's no bloody philosophical change. I mean, so this whole thing is 10 miles wide and a half an inch deep in terms of the thought that goes into it for the very reasons you're talking about. And because the motivators behind this. So why did Mamdani win? Why did he win? Okay, let me give you a bunch of things, a bunch of reasons he won, a bunch of reasons, honestly, we knew he was going to win. He's young. Okay, so young people tend to think old people, don't get it. Okay, that's cool. When I was young, the old people didn't get it. Now I'm older. I'm not old yet, but I'm older. And the young people think, well, you don't really get it. I mean, the people that know me, they know I get it, but, other people.
Yeah.
So Mamdani's young. So you got that dynamic. Mamdani is good looking. He's a good looking guy. He's a great looking guy. Mamdani is a good speaker. The man is articulate. He is well spoken. Now, a lot of that articulation and a lot of the confident stuff he says is just intellectual garbage. I mean, it's just has no, it is that,
but it flows really well.
It's like there is no constipation in the man's delivery. It's just flowing out, and that analogy could be extended further than that, but I won't for a family podcast. So there's all of that. There's also the thing that there is no question that in New York and in America and in a lot of places there is concentrated money, and people see that. I mean, if you look at the cost of renting an apartment in New York, I mean, for what I pay for my place on some acreage in Graham, Washington, I could get myself a nice little tiny apartment in New York.
A studio
apartment basically in New York. So there's an absolute disparity there. There's tremendous disparity. There's tremendous disparity between the haves and the have-nots. You've got that does exist, and I think the part of this to pay attention to, which we can get to later, I think, is what does this signal? What does it really say about the real disparity and the whole idea of oligarchy and the whole idea of crony capitalism versus regular capitalism versus free market? There's a bunch of stuff I think there that is worthwhile talking about. But all of that is why Mamdani got elected. That, and the other part of that is that so Trump, whatever you want to think of the man, he has consolidated. He's a consolidated figure. You can look at him and say, rich billionaire white old dude, he's only for the white people, all this, he's against the immigrants, and 40% of New York, 40% of the people in New York are not native born Americans, so they're like, I like Mamdani. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention this, Mamdani also is a Muslim American, first Muslim American. If you're young and you're progressive, you want the first of everything, the first this, first that, the first the other thing, and there's some value in that sometimes, but as a high principle, maybe not the highest principle of philosophy. So you put all that together, and of course Mamdani was going to win. There was no question that he was going to win.
Yeah, there's a couple other things I would add to that list. You're spot on all those things. I would add also, not only is he articulate, but he's passionate and has charisma.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And that I think matters.
Yes.
But also the thing he's selling hits all three buttons. What I mean is, like, if you look at like the movie Rocky, Return of the Jedi, all these box office smash movies. They all culminate with three different things coming together at one time. One is an external problem. We gotta win the Rockies gotta win the title. Okay, that's the external problem. Okay, then there's the internal problem, like he's got to overcome his self-doubt and his fears, and like so there's an emotional component, and then there's the philosophical piece, right? Like in Return of the Jedi, like when Luke Skywalker blows up the Death Star, like, okay, we gotta destroy the Death Star because they're bad and they kill a bunch of people. He has the emotional thing of his self-doubt, and then philosophically it's good versus evil.
Yeah,
right,
absolutely, 100%.
All the climax of the movie is all three of those things turning out the quote unquote right way all at the same time, right? So he has a message that is bringing all three of those external problem, internal problem, and philosophical problem all together at one time. And if you're listening to this and you're selling anything, this is something you want to aim for in selling whatever you sell.
Right.
Like if you can get the trifecta of these things right, then like your sales will go up, right? Okay, so you have the three different components of a great story coming together. And then the other thing I would add is this is addressing a fundamental human desire, which is I want the most to give and giving the least to get it.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
So the alternative solution is we have to work harder and you have to pay your dues and you have to, put in more effort and more sacrifice. Well, our brains are not physiologically wired for that to be the desired outcome. The brains are wired to not want to do that. Our brains want to conserve calories, not expend calories. They look for how to mitigate risk, but also do it with the least effort and expenditure possible. That's how we've lived for hundreds of thousands of years.
Exactly. Right.
So he's got all these tailwinds.
And
it takes, in my opinion, a level of awareness and consciousness and thinking to go, yeah, that all feels really good, but man, it's not the right answer. It's like, if a married guy going to a strip club or whatever, like, okay, yeah, in the short term, like that's fun, but long term, probably not the place you want to be, right?
Bad idea. Well, yeah, the other part of that, I think the environment that we're in also plays into it in the sense that the three things that you're mentioning in the narrative that build a great story, that build a great narrative, are also put on rocket fuel by a social media culture. So since social media is not designed in our threaded, even in the long form, the longest form conversations you could get on Facebook or X or whatever, they're not designed for probing issues deeply. They are sound bites, and who else in the world is most into social media? It's going to be, the young doom scrollers that are all day long. Fear of missing out. I can't miss out on what the latest one is. So that then just adds rocket fuel to that to create the situation where he was always going to win. I mean, it was just almost inevitable.
Yeah. And I would argue, like, long term, assuming this isn't the first domino to fall towards us, 7 years from now being a socialist nation. I'm hopeful that's not the outcome, but as I told you this a couple months ago, like I would almost argue this has to happen because we have the pain of having this kind of experiment done is so far in the past. Nobody's alive who has the kind of credibility or firsthand that can recall the pain that comes from these kinds of things. The only way we get exposed to that is like how you get exposed to the flu. Like you have to be exposed to it to be inoculated. And I unfortunately, I think that's just what it takes for us as
that is true.
Beings.
Now let me throw a monkey wrench into that discussion though. Because you're right, that's everything you just said is true. Now, my question is, and this is an open question for me, and I'll tell you why. My question is this indeed just we gotta drive this car to see it run off the cliff, and then we're gonna go back to our old tried and true, Chevy and be good again? Or is this the first domino to fall in a potential, socialist revolution, whatever. I've been listening to a variety of people on both sides. So, one person I've listened to said, look, Mamdani, New York, let's just, analyze it a little bit. He's got the city council to deal with. He can't do anything that the city council doesn't let him do. That's true. But if the National Democratic Party was unwilling to stand up against him and to stand up against the flood of young people and the flood of, excited, socialists, wannabe socialists, or is the city council really going to stop him? Is Kathy Hochul really going to, we're getting a little bit into the weeds, but so there's that. Are they going to, they wouldn't give up, they wouldn't, eat the rich because that's the golden goose that feeds everything, that happens in New York. So I had a friend of mine say that. I said, well, the entire, he's a DSA person, Democratic Socialist of America. But part of that culture is eat the rich. It's fundamental. It's like, we know if we, do all that, but you got to break a few eggs, Mao Zedong, basically. You got to break a few eggs to bring about the socialist utopia. So that to me is not a given. And then we do have across all cultures, across all Western cultures, we do have more and more and more concentration of wealth and power within the hands of fewer and fewer people. Now, I am as free market capitalist as you will find on the face of this earth. You do a day's work, you come up with a great idea. Whatever you do that's yours, that you make money off of, God bless you. I'm all for that. I'm a businessman, you're a businessman. This is how we've built our lives. I mean, I don't have a PhD from anywhere. I've got, I just built businesses all my life.
Well, you got Evergreen College, which is almost as good as the Harvard.
That almost gets me there. I'm just hoping that's my get out of jail free card if there is a socialist revolution. No. I was a closet socialist for 50 years. But we do have a problem in this country with what I would call oligarchy. I'm not going to call it oligarchy in the sense that I'm going to call it oligarchy in the sense of crony capitalism, in the sense of the counties that surround Washington, D.C. are the richest counties in the country, in the sense that people go into government, go into the halls of power, not to serve, but to make money. There are some that go there to serve, but there's a ton of them. They go there to get the plum jobs. I mean, look at take all the people from the former administrations of the last 20 years and what percentage of those people work in mass media making hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars per year, or work at, K Street lobby firms, or work in, so there is, and this is all, that's not what you and I do for a living. That's not earning your living by your intellect and the sweat of your brow and your creativity. That is gaming the system to get advantage. And when you have another interesting example for now is the first $5 trillion company NVIDIA became the first $5 trillion company. Yeah. I mean,
bigger than every stock market in the world except for I think 5.
And NVIDIA is bigger than India.
Yeah.
In terms of GDP. I mean, so you got one company is bigger than the largest country in the world in terms of revenue and GDP. So there is a fundamental systemic issue that we've got. I mean, I was saying this to a family member of mine who's overtly socialist. He's like, "Oh, you're joining my side." No, I'm not joining your side, but I recognize that there's a real problem.
But I think we're conflating. I think I agree with all those things. I do not like the idea of a handful of, even if it's 50 or 100 companies. Yeah. Dictating how our policies are written, how our foreign policy is conducted, which is objectively true. That's how it's turned out.
It is.
I also believe that if you looked at Cuba and you look at Cuba's version or Russia or Venezuela's version, they have the same thing.
Sure.
So for me, that's part of that is like baked in the cake. I'm not willing to give up and just say, well, nothing you can do about it. I don't believe that. I think that our government should actively be trying to minimize that. However, 100%. In every case in history that I know of, the government officials who make $72,000 a year, it doesn't cost a whole lot for companies to like get them to believe their way of thinking. I mean, I think a year and a half ago or something like that, we saw there was a secret recording. I don't know if it was O'Keefe or somebody recording somebody basically saying, you'd be surprised at how cheap you can get a senator. Like 10 grand, you can get a senator to do it. Okay, so I agree that that's just part of the equation always, no matter what your governmental and economic system is.
Right.
But I do think that our government specifically, more so than any other government, should be actively fighting that stuff. And I think we've done a
100%.
poor job.
Yes.
So I can have both those beliefs at one time. One is it's just baked in the cake. And two, also, this should be a major thing that we're fighting against.
Exactly.
And I would say there's a huge difference. Like there's a home services company here in the Phoenix area. They have 600 service trucks. Like they go to people's houses and fix things.
Yeah.
They have 600. It's a monster company.
Right.
They don't have the same benefits as Microsoft and Google and Nvidia. Like it's a completely different. That's a massive company. They have nowhere near the pull and influence of those. So there's a whole entire especially if you're in defense and things like that, you jump into a whole different level of influence and manipulation and things like that. I want to be careful not to conflate big business. The 600 service truck company is a very large company, but they're not influencing foreign policy.
Right. Yeah, and they're not influencing. They are not influencing national policy, foreign policy. They're not. So the issue there, that when I complain about this issue, I'm not complaining. I mean, I'm talking a very small percentage of the companies that are out there. I'm talking about, if you look at the influence that the Mag 7 have, the Magnificent Seven, that are all multi-trillion-dollar companies. I'm not talking about the little bitty $100 million, $200 million companies, because those are the you build yourself a $1 million, a $10 million, $100 million company. Man, mad respect, mad props. You get it, and that's the difference between what I would call capitalism. That's capitalism. Now, when you then, however, when you get to the point of a Bill Gates, and I don't demonize anybody. I mean, there's sometimes Bill Gates says things I really agree with. Sometimes he says things I think he's nuts. But you get to some of those points in where you're actually influencing society to go on a way just for rent seeking, just to enrich yourself. And, it's the Dwight David Eisenhower, warning at the end of his, military industrial complex. I think we've got the same thing in big tech these days. Now,
for sure.
To tie this back to my point, though, here's the thing is all of that is so out in the open now that if enough young people and enough, disaffected folks at the bottom end of the scale are Mamdaniized, if you will, we could actually have that kind of social unrest that I don't expect in this culture. We would go towards a Russian Revolution type of thing, because it's not that concentrated as it was in the Romanov family. Or I don't expect Robespierre, to bring out the guillotines in the French Revolution, because I think in a lot of ways our society is a little bit insulated from that kind of revolution, because the disaffected still have iPhones and still spend all their time on TikTok and have a pretty decent, it's not the bread and circuses of the Roman Empire.
Yeah, and I think I'm not a historian. I don't know this stuff nearly as well as you do, but based on my limited understanding, the difference between us and the French Revolution and the Russian Revolution is, in our case, you have these ultra wealthy oligarchs at the top, these top, 500 or 1,000 individuals or companies or whatever that have a lot of influence that I would argue they probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
And then at the very bottom, you have people who have been given an amount of supplemental subsidies that provide them a higher standard of living than the lower middle class who's going to work every day, who makes too much money to qualify for the benefits, but doesn't make enough money to get ahead.
That's right.
So it's bookended in our case, where you have the people at the top who are getting, quote unquote, an unfair amount, and the people at the very bottom who are getting, quote, an unfair amount. And the people in the middle, particularly the bottom, the lower half of the middle class, they're the ones paying the price. And quite frankly, there's not enough of them I don't think, and they don't organize well.
Yeah.
And nobody really cares about them. Quite, it's kind of how it feels to them. I mean, and from my perspective, like, you know, if you're a mechanic making $22 an hour and your wife is a waitress, you know, making whatever in tips, you make too much to qualify for the benefits that the person who came here illegally can get immediately.
Yeah.
So you're resentful for the illegal person, and you look at the oligarchs, and they don't have to worry about anything with money ever, and they might not be happier, but they're not at risk of losing their apartment, and their kids, you know, are going to have clothes always. So you're resentful of these two groups of people. That feels different to me than the Russian Revolutionary, where all the serfs and the French Revolution, where it was all the poor people who didn't have any kind of subsidies.
Yeah.
They didn't have anything else to do because they could unite, they could organize, and they didn't have a lower group of people to point at. It they only focus their anger and angst up.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of my point, that we have it even the lower echelons of people, that if they're not drug addicted, if they're not, you know, on the streets, and even the lower echelons in the income scale here have it better than the. And I got to be careful about how I say that, because, you know, there's plenty of poverty in the country, but they have it better than the folks in those previous revolutions. That's absolutely true. Now, but I still think there is a non-0% chance that a movement could be generated similar to what we saw in New York, that could become dangerous. Now, here's a scenario. Let me play out this scenario for you. Time will tell if this is true. Now, there's no question that the things that Mamdani is proposing, you know, government-owned grocery stores, free bus, you know, rent controls, these are all economically ill-advised policies. Yeah. They won't turn out like they think they'll turn out. They don't work like the slogans say they work. Now, when they don't work the way the slogans think they work, you know, most of us over here would say, okay, well, you tried it, it didn't work, so let's do some normal stuff. Now, what's more likely going to happen is when they try it, it doesn't work. It's because you know, upper middle class people, it's because you Republicans, it's because of Trump, you people stop this from working. Right way. Right. Yeah, you didn't let us do socialism the right way, and therefore, you know, to the streets, and Mamdani needs to be the, you know, the this, that, or the other thing, you know. So that's where I think the danger is.
Well, yeah, and I would also say I've had a firm belief that there's only three ways this 420 can go. One would be an outside force, like a Pearl Harbor kind of thing, would unite us, and we would have a common foe there. Some kind of, you know, civil war-ish kind of a thing, red state, blue state, you know, states seceding, that kind of thing, or people revolting against the government. I've now decided there's a fourth alternative, which I could absolutely see playing out with the Mamdani thing, exactly how you're talking about, which is states revolting against the federal government and having a federal government versus states issue conflict, whatever that looks like. I mean, that I is becoming seemingly more likely now as a contender for the trigger or the big issue of the era of, like, because let's say Mamdani wants to do all this stuff and he wants to do all these things. Well, somebody has to pay for that stuff, right? And historically, based on my, again, limited understanding, I could be getting some of the details wrong, but states like California run a budget deficit for long periods of time. And then some national catastrophe happens, like Hurricane Katrina, and we do this huge money package to help the people of Hurricane Katrina. But, oh, by the way, somewhere in there, quietly, $100 billion or so is wrapped up to go bail California out, because they've out of money, and they have been for a few years. And it just quietly gets swept into the Hurricane Katrina bill, and who wants to vote against, you know, helping the people with Hurricane Katrina?
Exactly.
Like, nobody's gonna. You can't do that. You can't go on record of voting against that. But quietly, this money just gets put in there to bail out the state who's run a budget deficit for all these years, because they're funding things like free healthcare for people who just moved here, while denying healthcare to people who make $43,000 a year when the limit's $42,000 a year. Right. Now, I'm sure I'm getting part of the details that wrong, but generally that's kind of my perception of how these things have gone. And I know the money I know states have been bailed out. That part I'm certain about. I know that they give benefits to people who make under X amount and they deny people who make over X amount. I know that legitimately happens. I know for certain that happens, right? So somewhere along the way, I can see New York doing this stuff and saying, okay, we need this federal money, and the federal government is saying no.
Right.
And now the federal government's the bad guy because you're shutting us down. But they'll leave the part out about where you're asking the guy from Kansas and Iowa and Nebraska to fund the stuff in New York that Kansas, Iowa, and Nebraska said no to because they think it's a bad policy. But you still want their money to make it happen. Like that part will get lost in the conversation, right?
Right. Yeah, well, I think as part of this, the way that the system is evolving sort of exacerbates that too. So for instance, President Trump is doing a lot of things which are very appropriate to solve problems that states are not solving themselves. Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't believe that everything President Trump does is automatic, rubber stamp. It's the greatest thing that's ever been. Everybody's saying it's the greatest thing, all that. So I don't believe that. But he's taking actions which are ostensibly potentially more aggressive than previous presidents do. So there's more power that is being concentrated within the executive branch. There's been more of the executive orders, et cetera. He's not the first person to do executive orders. Bush did them, Obama did them, et cetera.
And let's not forget that Dick Cheney, I know you're a big fan of his, Dick Cheney specifically made his vice president about giving more power to the president. And this is a relatively new phenomenon.
This is a march that's been happening for a very long time now.
And Obama took advantage of that, and Trump won.
Biden did.
He was hamstrung a lot. Biden took a huge advantage of this. Yes. And it's just the snowball rolling downhill.
And every time it escalates a little bit more. Now, but what happens though is who's ever in power, everybody forgets what happened last week or what happened a month ago. It doesn't, everything you and I just said is proper historical context for understanding this. But, all the time we hear, what do we hear? Trump is an autocrat. He's a dictator. Is this and that and the other thing, because he's done this. It's never been done before in the history of the world. He's basically Stalin on steroids or something. This whole march then exacerbates that conflict potentially. So Mamdani wins and he does these things. And so Trump reacts and maybe the federal government cuts off some funding to New York and then the Democrats are like, well, we can't take the blame. So we're gonna all just fall in lockstep, so they don't, Chuck Schumer didn't endorse Mamdani, but a bunch of Democrats, Obama didn't endorse Mamdani, he called him to congratulate him. So there's a bunch of Democrats are like, they know that they got, this is dangerous for their party because their party is potentially over, with Mamdani because he's the progressive wing. I mean, this is potentially AOC running for president next time, so that's all very possible and but it's because of this escalation. So Trump can do this, and I'm not saying he should just sit back, but it's a very natural, escalatory thing that could then result in, okay, well, there's your succession, there's your people succeeding from the union at the state level.
Because again, if I was the president or I was the czar of which states get bailed out, there would be a finite amount, right? It's okay. There's a reasonable amount of helping a state out, and then there's an unreasonable amount of helping a state out. And by the way, if you're like one of the things they said that, again, I don't know if anything you read online is true or not anymore, but one of the things that they said was free health care or gender affirming surgeries for everyone, including people who fly here from other places to get them. Okay, that was a quote. So I'm reasonably sure that was an accurate portrayal of what they were saying. Okay. Yeah. Now, if I'm the guy deciding out which states gets bailed out, I might say, well, that's an overstep. Like that's a super expensive endeavor to take on, and I don't think that's what the government should be doing. So I'm going to say no. I'm not going to be your financial backstop for that. So what the people in the blue state would say is, here he's retaliating because we're a blue state, and now we have what's set up for the federal government picking and choosing winners in the states based on if they're Democrat or Republican. When actually that's not the thing, and it all get conflated, and boom, now you have a thing where the mean old federal government who's only favoring conservative states is not supporting other states. So if we're not going to be supported by this government, why should we even be a part of it? And then we're off to the races.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and the other thing that happened last night that adds fuel to that fire is Prop 50 in California passed, which basically means that they can essentially redraw the California Democrats can redraw the lines like it's a snake that's winding around and essentially eliminate any representation for Republicans at all. Which then, of course, all the Republican states will naturally see that as escalatory. Which now Newsom saw the Texas redistricting as escalatory, and the problem with these things, I think, Brian, is that they have a tendency to escalate regardless of if anybody wants them to or not. Even if they know that it's going to result in bad things.
So two things happened at once in California last night. This is wild. 92% of the people surveyed said that a nonpartisan commission should do the districting for the legislative seats in California.
Right.
And at the same time, Prop 50 passed.
Yeah. Right. Well, so what does that tell you about? So that to me tells you about how everything runs today. That the only thing, you said it a few minutes ago, the only thing that matters is narrative and story. The only thing that matters is narratives, logic, cognitive, what's the opposite of cognitive dissonance? Cognitive sonance? I don't know. But having things making sense is completely irrelevant. Historical relevancy is completely irrelevant. Cause and effect is completely irrelevant. The only thing that matters is the story. I saw a rather amusing ad by Tom Steyer, who is a California, leftist business guy. He ran this ad that showed up. I don't know why it showed up on what my dad was watching, but it showed up on my dad's cable channel that he was watching, and it showed this picture of President Trump that you could tell the back of the hair, and he was getting mad, and he throws his McDonald's French fries on the ground, and he starts yelling at the TV. No, it's a good, and it's. There was no, it was all for Prop 50. And there was no, and in fact, the funny thing about this ad was it said paid for by Tom Steyer. It wasn't committees, but, one of these euphemistic things. But it was interesting to me because there was no actual, policy. Here's why this policy makes sense. It's sticking to the Trump eye. That's all it is.
Right.
It's all that.
The 92% said, we should have it done by a nonpartisan committee. Should do this. It shouldn't be by red or blue. Prop 50 passes, and of the people who voted for Prop 50, the exit polls they did, why did you vote for this? And I think it was 71% said to stop Trump.
Exactly. So, I mean, it probably wouldn't have even mattered what it was. If it was they probably could have ran a stop Trump bill that had an appropriation of a few $1 billion that, went to buying Gavin Newsom, hair gel or something, and it probably would have passed.
So I think that the undercurrent of all this, which Ray Dalio talks about this, and he has kind of a different spin on, he has a version of the fourth turning, but it's a much longer time horizon. It's like 250-year cycles and whatever. Anyhow, he has a similar kind of a thing. This is how empires rise and fall and whatever.
Yeah.
But he talks about when the disparity of income reaches X point. I don't know what his metric is for this, but whenever it reaches X point, this is what happens. Right. So I don't think there's anybody. I don't think I would even know anybody who would say there's not a unreasonable disparity of income between the haves and have-nots. Sure. I think universally everyone would say that's true.
Yeah.
Now, the reasons that they would give for why that is, and the solutions they would have to get out of it are opposing. They're 180 degrees different, right?
Totally.
So I think this is where we get down to just whoever can organize and whatever, whether that is in stories and narratives or muskets and cannons, that's how these things are decided. I do also I chuckle. I was thinking about one of your relatives who I have not talked to them on Facebook in a couple of years, I think, but one time a couple of years, I remember this very clearly with one of your relatives specifically. And he was talking about how we need to do like socialism. And I just asked him on Facebook, I said, why don't you just find 49 of your closest friends and go start a socialist commune somewhere in Eastern Oregon or Nevada or whatever, where people just leave you alone. You can do whatever you want to do. And you can do what you want to do within the confines of our great country and accomplish what you want. And his response was, that won't work because we need your money.
Yeah. Well, this is honest, right?
He was honest. Yeah. I'll give him credit for that, right? And that's always stuck with me. Like, okay, these things will work until you don't have the money.
Yeah.
And the money is either going to come from taxpayers who stay voluntarily or not, or like California, they have a 10-year trailing tax now. If you leave California, they tax you for like 10 years after you leave or something crazy. I don't know if that's still, I know it was proposed and I think it passed. I don't know if it's survived, any kind of
I don't think it's legal, but
escalatory kind of court thing or whatever. Or the federal government pays for it. Like you take money from Iowa and Wyoming and you ship it to California and New York. Well, at some point, people are going to be like tired of that, right? Yeah. And the people paying the bill will say that's enough, whether they move out of New York or California, or they say we're not paying our federal income tax in Wyoming anymore, whatever it is. At some point, there will be a line drawn, and that's where the real rubber will hit the road, in my opinion. Yeah. Looking at New York as the, arguably the financial mecca of the world, surpassing London, I would guess. Decades
very much.
Probably,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I learned yesterday that J.P. Morgan, the biggest bank in the world, outside or in the United States anyway, for sure. I don't know where it is on the global ranking, but they have more employees in Texas already than they have in New York City.
That's right.
That shocked me.
Yeah.
So part of me is like, okay, they're couching their bets here. Like they're ahead of the curve on it, which I'm surprised the guys on Wall Street have inside information and they know this stuff. But I had no idea that they were that far ahead of the curve on this.
Yeah, there was a survey done by The Economist, it's out of Britain, and they have they do, they are center left. They're not progressive radicals, but they were talking about the likelihood of an exodus of significant amounts of financial exodus from New York, and where has it already happened? And Texas has been by far the biggest beneficiary. Florida as well has been a big beneficiary. So those things, because the thing that is interesting, and also another thing that exacerbates this whole divide between haves and have-nots and income disparity and all that in this country is that wealth is mobile. Wealth is very mobile. Poverty is not mobile. So when the wealthy people leave, the people in poverty, they can't go to Texas. They can't go to Florida. They don't have the money to do that. And so when they leave, then the folks in, they say, well, you drove them out. And they're going to be like, no, they abandoned us. So, so it's all back to
they couldn't stand up to do their civic duty and take care of the rest of us.
And so they left. And so we're going to go there and we're going to get it. We're going to get it back. And so there's all of these factors that, if you would have asked me, a couple, even 2 or 3 years ago, is there much of a possibility of a socialist uprising? I would have said there's zero possibility of that. I still don't think it is the most likely outcome, but I think the chances of that have risen significally in the past few years.
I'd put it 65-35 is where I'd kind of peg it right now.
Really?
65%. We stay free market society, and 35% chance we become a socialist country.
Yeah, I was thinking about 40-60, something like that. I would say that. But, those are still pretty scary odds when it comes to what could happen next, because
when I graduated high school in 1993, I would have said like 0.1% chance.
No, there's no
possibility. A pretty remarkable change.
There's no possibility.
Of course, it's not going to be like that. Yeah.
And the technology, I have to come back to this. The technology has exacerbated all of that. The technology, the internet, AI, social media, that has exacerbated all of that and because it's taken anything that's small and given it a megaphone to amplify it huge. I don't know that Mamdani, we wouldn't be talking about Mamdani 20 years ago because social media didn't exist. We know about it, but it wouldn't be the same.
Yeah. I think that part of like looking forward a little bit, part of the reason I'm now at like 35% and 6 months from now, I might be 55% because it's moving pretty quickly where AI is going to replace such a large percentage of the workforce. And I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be like the .com where, we have these, the $5 trillion NVIDIA. And then, I wouldn't be surprised if a year and a half from now it's worth, $500 million because it had a 90% crash, just who was a Cisco in 1999 or whatever, like whatever company it was. Right.
Yeah.
But then after the ashes, built from that was the internet we now know, which is the powerhouse of the economy. I kind of expect AI to kind of follow a similar track.
I think so.
It's going to be this insane bubble and it'll be stupid spending, reckless spending. It'll fall apart. And then after from the ashes will come what reality will become. That's kind of how I'm anticipating it.
Yeah.
At some point, many jobs are going to go away.
Yeah.
And people will not have anything to do. So there will be some kind of UBI of some kind of universal basic income or whatever. And I don't know how you mesh that with a free market society. It feels like it has to be some kind of, what we would consider socialist by our standards.
Yeah.
The same way that pre-depression, people would look at Social Security and say, well, now you just become a socialist country. Like the whole thing's ruined now.
Right.
I kind of think we're going to have the same view of like the whole thing is ruined, but it'll still be more free market than Cuba or Venezuela or Russia or whatever. But it just feels to me like the collective global society is incrementally moving towards that. And maybe it's just because that's the only way it can really work long term.
Yeah.
Maybe these little flash in the pan 250-year experiments with like what we've tried to do in the United States history shows that these don't last.
Well, and you see, Brian, I think, I think you're onto something there. I think that what all of us need to be prepared for is a new system that I don't think it's going to be socialist. I don't think it's going to be capitalist. I don't think it's going to be anything that you or I think that Kenny G will live in a system that we have a really hard time putting a name on. It's going to be something so different. I'm sure there's going to be parts of, the best parts of the current system will probably survive. There will be other parts. I think I think you're right. I do think that, and I've heard lots of people talking about this. It's taken me a couple of years to get used to this notion, but I've heard a lot of people talking about how AI probably makes UBI inevitable to some level, even though it is definitionally socialist. But I don't think we're going to see a socialist utopia as, that's ever been defined. And I don't think we're going to see an American republic the same way it is now. I think we'll probably still have.
I don't think you can drive out people's desire to create and improve.
Yes.
That's the element to me. Like, I talked to you before, like my concern with AI is like, what's people's purpose going to be? And part of me is like, well, for some people, not the majority, 20%, 15%, you can't wean out that drive to create, build, both build monetary things, but build organizations and build structures. And like, I don't think you can like that energy is going to have to go somewhere.
Yeah, that's part of human nature.
That will be, there'll be a free market associated with that. Again, and what it's going to look like, I couldn't tell you. No different than the people in 1922 could have told you what it looks like in 1952. Like, it's a completely different country.
Yeah.
Right. That you couldn't even explain to them what a 2.2 car household is going to look like, and everybody lives in the suburbs, and like everybody has their neatly manicured lawn. Like what? Like that's so different than the Roaring 20s or post World War I. Like people can wrap their heads around that.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to have the same thing. Like what it's going to look like being. There's no way you and I could describe it or anticipate it. I do think that whatever it is, like the fourth turning says, I think we'll all be unified in whatever that is. Whatever. And Neil Howe, who wrote that book with Bill Strauss, talks about like everyone's going to be pissed at the end.
Yeah,
nobody's going to get what they want, but but facing continued conflict is such a high cost to pay that we all just embrace the new thing because it's not that.
Yeah,
and so there'll be elements of capitalism, there'll be elements of socialism, there'll be elements of all these things. Everyone's going to have to give some, and it's like the crudest, most forced compromise ever, because the alternative is chaos and destruction to a level that's just not sustainable.
And I think that's the survival skill that our generation will need moving through the fourth turning, is the ability to adapt to and not insist that it's our brand of this or our, I said to a couple of Democrat friends, I said, look, the Democrat Party's over. And like, what do you do? The Democrats are. I said, no, don't worry, the Republican Party's over too. It's all over.
Yeah.
Both of them are over. What? We can't insist that we bring back the past, because the past is the past. And I think for Kenny G in his day, whatever this new system is that's going to replace our system, Kenny G is going to have to hold on to it a little bit loosely during his fourth turning scenario, and realize that whatever that scenario is probably not going to survive into the 2100s. It's going to be yet another thing that is so far beyond anything that we can conceive that, forget it. But Kenny G is going to have to be able to adapt to this. So adaptability in a fourth turning era, I think, is a crucial survival skill.
Yeah, and to me, it feels like the rubber band metaphor. Where you stretch a rubber band and it snaps back. It kind of feels like that. Like that's what's happening. Like, for example, the same night that Mamdani was elected mayor in New York, Texas overwhelmingly passed a ballot measure barring non-citizen voting.
Yeah.
I mean, I
couldn't be more opposite.
That I can't remember if it was the Bronx or one of the boroughs in New York City. 48% of the residents there were not born in the United States.
Yeah.
And there's 160 languages spoken. Now, I'm not anti. I think that I'm a big fan of the melting pot.
Yeah.
As long as people come here to assimilate and contribute and make us better, not come here to extract resources,
right?
And send half of it back home to whatever, or and change the rules to mimic the thing that they hated so much they left to come here.
Right, exactly.
So you have this on one end, like whoever wants to come, and we're not going to check IDs for voting, and we'll give you free sex changes, we'll give you all these benefits, and as many as we can cram in here, we're going to do that. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have like you can't even vote if you don't have ID. That's the rubber band stretching, in my opinion. And when it snaps back, it'll be a violent, painful thing. And then at the end of that, we'll all come together again in whatever form that's going to look like.
Right. So we have to hold loosely to some of the things that we've held tightly to, and we have to be able to adapt and also I think like I can't help myself. I argue on social media because it's just in my nature to do that. But I also argue less on social media now, because most of the stuff that we argue about now, most of these things are, you might call them rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. We're arguing about things that are passing away, that are going into the history books, and they're not going to be the things that we're actually talking about in the future.
Yeah. Well, I do think the Mamdani thing is notable. I think it's significant on a number of different levels. The notoriety. I mean, he's arguably surpassed some of the loudest voices in the Democrat Party in 8 months or something like that. 10
absolutely.
months. I mean, he's got more influence than arguably Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. Probably more than Jasmine Crockett, who's been kind of the loud voice. Definitely more than Kamala Harris, who was running for president.
Oh yeah, nobody even remembers her anymore.
Yeah, I mean the influence this guy has, kind of coming out of nowhere, that's just indicative to me of people's desire to latch on to anything that will give them hope and get them out. And again, I would argue that his methodologies are wrong, but I completely understand why they're latching on with such fervor to somebody who will hopefully bring change. Now, I don't think he's going to be all that successful. He'd probably be more successful than I'm giving him credit for, and he'll probably be wildly less successful than he thinks he's going to be.
Right.
Those things are probably true, right?
Yeah, I put that on a bet.
But I get why people are gravitating towards that.
Sure.
I totally get it. I watched a video today of a gal. She says her and her husband make $100,000 a year combined, and they're upside down $1,600 a month. But they make too much to qualify for any kind of benefits.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So they're not in the lowest tier where people are taking care of them, and they're certainly not in the highest tier where they don't have to worry about money. They're in the worst possible spot, which is you're almost making it, but you're not, and there's no help for you.
Yeah.
Those people are going to, there will be a limit to how much they will tolerate it.
Exactly right. Exactly right. It's very strange. $100,000 used to be a pretty good chunk of money. It's very strange.
I mean, 10 years ago,
yeah,
you had a couple make $100,000 a year. Like you had a boat and maybe a second property, and
you were doing fine.
Crushing it.
Yeah, no, that's the age we live in.
You throw $6 trillion to the economy, and things change.
Yep, that's exactly it.
All right. Well, as Dave said in the beginning, if there's anything we said that was especially correct in your opinion or especially wrong, we'd love to hear about it. We're trying to explain to future generations what this moment in time is like, as they will undoubtedly look back and wonder what the hell is wrong with us as we went through this crazy era. And we're trying to talk about things that aren't likely to make the history books and just kind of explain more what it feels like to be in this era. So with that, this is Dave and Brian signing off.
See you next week.
Do you want to be unsilent? Make your voice heard on our social media channels and share where you think we got it right or wrong. Go to unsilentpodcast.com for social links so you can join the discussion.